Do you have a tough challenge with your supply chain or logistics? Loguru is the intelligent partner that works globally with manufacturers, retailers, and logistics businesses. We help our customers define, buy, and safely implement solutions across the supply chain. If you want a more sustainable future for your supply chain, visit loguru.co.uk. Complete end-to-end satisfaction guaranteed.
Coming up in this episode.
The tendency is to try to make one size fit all. If you've done ABC 10 times and it's worked, don't expect the 11th time that ABC is going to work. One lesson would be that one size fits one. Never forget to customize and to adapt to the specific situation that you're facing, because every time you try to generalize, it's going to come back and smack you upside the head.
The Logistics Collective podcast is a series focused on the logistics industry, where there are many incredible stories to be told. We'll be speaking with those who've worked and are working within the industry today. What have been their experiences, good and bad, since joining, and would they recommend a career in the industry to others? Here's your host, Malcolm Pope.
Hello and welcome to part 2 of the interview with Jim Tompkins. So, who has inspired you most in your career, and how and why did they inspire you?
That's actually an easy question. When you ask it, the one name comes to mind almost instantaneously. It's Dr. Rudell Reed. I transferred into Purdue as a junior, and I worked real hard and had virtually straight A's. And so that resulted in me feeling pretty good about myself. And the capstone course at Purdue as a senior I took was facilities planning. And the author of the book was Dr. Rudell Reed. And I got an A in the midterm. I got an A on the final project, and I got an A on the final exam. And so back then, the professors used to post the grades outside their door in the little strips of paper. And I went to check my grade, and I was shocked, and then I got a B. And I thought, how did I get a B? I got an A, and how do you average an A and get a B? It doesn't make sense. So I knocked on the door, and Professor Reed said, come in. And I opened the door, and he said, hi, Tompkins, how can I help you? And I said, well, Professor Reed, I noticed I got a B in the class. And so he pulls out his little grade book, and he looks at the grade book, and he said, oh, wow. He said, you had the high grade in the class on the midterm. You really did well on that. And then he said, oh, and then he looks in his book. He said, oh, yeah, in the final exam, you really aced that too. Good job. And he said, and your project, I remember your project was really super. You got an A on that. And he said, what does it say on the door? He said, I said, well, it says I got a B. He says, what do you think about that, Tompkins? I said, well, I don't know how you get an A and an A and an A and you get a B. He said, well, that's not how I did it, Tompkins. He said, the way I do it, he says, no one graduates from Purdue with all A's. And so I thought giving you a B would be helpful to you. And so I did what I thought would be helpful. And I paused, and he said, do you think that's fair? I said, no, I do not think that's fair. He says, Tompkins, here's your lesson here. Life's not fair. And life's not fair. If you probably took this up with the student senate or the faculty senate or one of those groups, they'd probably make me reverse the grade. He said, but I think the lesson you're learning here is much more important. He said, how's the interviewing going? I said, well, it's going pretty well. He said, you got some offers? I said, yes, I do. He said, are you making more money? Is the offers you're making more than your classmates? I said, no. He said, do you think that's fair? I said, no. I said, up until now, I never got a B, and I worked real hard, and I think I should be rewarded for that. He said, well, there it goes again. Life's not fair, is it, Tompkins? He said, I tell you what, if you really think you should get an A in this course, or you really think that you're better than your fellow classmates, maybe what you ought to do is double your education for a 1-year commitment. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, if you get a master's here at Purdue, it only takes you a year, and you'll have double the amount of credit in industrial engineering. I said, well, sir, I'm married, and my wife and I, we really want to get on with life, and I couldn't afford that. He said, no, I got that. I said, what do you mean? He said, I got all. He said, I got that. He said, I'll pay your tuition, I'll pay your books, I'll pay you, for your apartment and your living expenses. He says, yeah, we'll cover that. You'll work for me as a graduate instructor, and it won't cost you any money. You don't need any money, Tompkins. You just need to have the desire to prove you're better, and that you really can make something happen. And I said, well, I don't think that's in the cards, sir. And he said, I just want you to think about it. So I went home and told my wife about it, and we talked about it, and we decided, okay, we're going to do it. So we did it. And then during my master's, I got stung by the research bug, and that resulted in the PhD. And so Dr. Reed changed my life because he challenged me to see if I really was better, than prove it. Don't just sit there and think you deserve an A. Go do something about it. And Dr. Reed had a profound effect on me, and I'll forever be grateful.
That is that really is a wonderful piece of sharing, and I think it was a stop and think moment. I almost felt that he'd recognised, or they'd recognised something in you that was. I think the B was absolutely deliberate. He actually knew you well enough to know what was going to happen as a result of that. So they were utterly prepared in terms of that they knew that was going to happen, and that for me is it's an absolutely fantastic story. But also it's about, there are rare people in this world that seek to push others forward. And that is a wonderful example. I've been fortunate to have a couple of examples of that. And I think that, life is not fair, but it is full of opportunity if you choose to open your eyes.
Opportunity, absolutely. Right on.
So what are you most proud of? And you've got a lot to be proud of. And you're going to have a real heart. I mean, over 50 years marriage is something absolutely to be proud of. To have children and grandchildren is absolutely at the top of the tree. Fantastic career, both in academia, published author, 31-fold. You started at least 2 businesses that I'm aware of, and then putting your arms around global supply chain and logistics. So you're going to have a hard job, but I'm only going to let you have one thing.
Okay. Well, I'm glad we talked about Dr. Tompkins and Jim Tompkins, and each one of those people will only have one thing. So Jim, he is most proud of his family. Been married for 55 years, 3 grown children who are married, 8 grandchildren, and that's what I'm most proud of. Jim is a real happy dad, husband, and grandpa. And so that's what I'm most proud of there. Dr. Tompkins is most proud about his body of work. I think we've pushed some really interesting boundaries, and we continue to do that. And I just love that when I'm able to be a spark in some company or some individual and help them see things differently. And I just really am proud of those 2 things. Is personally, it's family, and professionally, it's the work that has resulted in people becoming more successful.
And that, I think, the hidden message within there, and it's that view of humility. And you said it's honesty in our prior discussion, but I would say if you're there to give the good for others, then I think that the world does balance. I'm a great believer in karma, and so do your best to do good to others and nothing other than that. And I do say you've got a lot to be proud of. What's one lesson your job and maybe your life has taught you that you think everyone should learn at some point in their life?
Well, it's one lesson. I guess the one lesson I would share is that when you figure something out, there's a tendency to want to apply that in different circumstances. And what I've learned is that one size fits one. And the tendency is to try to make one size fit all. But it's not, because each circumstance is unique. People are unique. And so no matter if you've done ABC 10 times and it's worked, don't expect the 11th time that ABC is going to work. It might be BAC or CAB, or it might be a different formula. So one lesson would be that one size fits one, and never forget to customize and to adapt to the specific situation that you're facing. Because every time you try to generalize, it's going to come back and smack you upside the head.
Very, very intuitive. I think from my basis, when I'm going shopping for clothes at the moment, I find that no size fits anything. But that's less about the clothing manufacturers and more about me. But there you go. So perhaps beginning to take a more forward view, I mean, what exciting new solutions are you seeing in the market at the moment, Jim?
Well, virtually everything that is really exciting and cool has something to do with technology, be it automation. If you look at what we're doing in ports, we look at what we're doing in fulfillment centers, if you look at what we're doing in autonomous vehicles, there's just a huge impact of using sensors and computer systems and communication systems to make things work better, quicker, cheaper, to let them work safer. And so it's really, really cool. So physical automation is, and this is, ports and warehouses, and saw some really interesting technology the other day. Instead of you, Malcolm, driving from California to Chicago with your truck and then trying to get your next load, and me driving from Chicago to California and then get the next load, what we're doing is we're setting up a automated yard in Denver, and you drive from California to Denver, drop your trailer, pick up another trailer, and go back to California so you can sleep with the family. I'm picking up my load in Chicago, driving to Denver, picking up your load and taking it back to Chicago. And now I'm sleeping with my family and creating the quality of life for the truckers. I call it a freight port. It is totally automated. There's no people there. There's some cameras and people are watching the cameras, but it's totally done automated, and it's very cool, the load matching and what we're able to do things. And so automation is just a tremendously exciting field. Robotics is a tremendously exciting field. And then that's on the physical side. And then on the mental side, of course, it's AI, which be it machine learning, which we've been doing for over 20 years, and have got a tremendous body of work there. Or we're talking about the new generative AI. If you look across supply chain, there's not a single step within the supply chain, from demand forecasting all the way to sales and marketing, that isn't being impacted by either traditional AI or generative AI today. So I find that really, really exciting, and then the value we can add. And people are saying, well, aren't we going to replace a lot of jobs? Well, this gets back to the Industrial Revolution, where in Europe we had the Lundys smashing the weaving looms and so forth. No, this isn't going to end production or end jobs. It's going to upgrade jobs, and it's going to result in the continued increase in quality of life. And so automation and artificial intelligence and technology in general is just really, it's almost, what can I imagine next? It's really cool to see where we're going. So it's an exciting time to be working in our field, because things that 2 years ago were impossible are now being replaced with the next solution. In fact, that reminds me of the quote, experience is the process of watching things happen that are new, that you learned while you made the mistake again. Okay, and so it's an interesting process of repeating mistakes results in additional learning and additional discovery and innovation. And so I just love the whole concept of just putting my feet up and imagining, what if we did this? What if we did this? And probably about 80% of the harebrained ideas I come up wind up in the trash can under the desk. But maybe 4 or 5% of these wind up being deployed and really making a difference. So it's kind of cool. It's a great time to be doing supply chain because we can really make a difference.
Number of keynotes within there. I mean, in terms of the direction of travel and the future thinking, absolutely yes. One, I loved your freight port discussion, and the reason I loved it, not because it actually makes absolute sense, it's something that chimed with me, which was about its quality of life for the driver. And when I look at the way the majority of systems operate, to me, I look at them and say, well, okay, they've got 3 pillars of what they focus on. And of course, there's some notion of price cost within there as one pillar. There's another notion of quality or timeliness. And then the final one is about legal compliance. And when I look at the majority, whether it be ERP, WMS, TMS, whatever is out there, those are pretty much the 3 cores within it. Don't break the law. Provide a level of service that is acceptable, or provide a product that is acceptable, and at the end do it for the right price. And then I ask myself a question, which is, well, what about a happy employee? Where's that come in terms of your core algorithms? And where does sustainability come in terms of your core algorithms? And during the wonderful time of the pandemic, we were a bit quiet. And so we looked at over 60 TMSs, and we did an end-to-end review of them. And I called it SETI. And SETI was not the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. For me, this was the search for extra transport intelligence. And sadly, like SETI, we're still waiting for actually what we would regard as intelligence to come there. But the thought in terms of, I saw machine learning and AI come about 18, 19 years ago. I began to look and see, and quite a lot came out of Russia, interestingly enough. To my mind, when we're looking at this, Jim, I'd love an answer. At what point does what I call HI, which is human intelligence, prove insufficient to ask the right questions of AI? Because what I see it being utilized for at the moment is to solve the simple stuff, when in reality, if it meets its press, we should be asking it some of the real complicated stuff. And I like to call those superhuman questions. I think we've got to develop an ability to ask superhuman questions. I mean, what's your view?
My view is there's an unknown territory out there. I think what you're saying makes sense. I think the use of technology should first be used to replace boring labor consumption tasks, and therefore where AI is best applied is doing the routine, doing the boring, okay? And so I'm perfectly comfortable with artificial intelligence. I have a situation in my supply chain where I have, in the next 2 hours, 15 million problems that need to be solved. My brain has the ability to do that, but not in that time frame.
No.
But AI can deal with those 15 million issues in scheduling and rescheduling and replanning and putting on different chips and making things happen so I can accomplish the objective. And so doing the mundane is where the power in AI today is. It's not something that the person couldn't do, but they can do it easier with the assistance of the power of the computer. And so I think that's where I want to focus my attention today. I don't see generative AI is called large learning models. But the fact of the matter is, what it is it's large regurgitation models, because they are regurgitating something else that has already been learned. And so when it scans the world, it's going to take all of given knowledge today and give you the best it is. But it can't take the knowledge that we don't have today to project the new knowledge. So it's not an intelligence generating machine, it's an intelligence scanning machine. And so I think that's the difference. And I'm not afraid of it replacing humans because humans have capabilities that of innovation and creativity and imagination. And AI doesn't have those skills and never will, because it can only regurgitate prior learning. And therefore, a lot of the concerns out there, I think, are good to have, because we need to have ethics in AI. Certainly, there's some situations in medicine where engineers execute, doctors practice. Therefore, the use of artificial intelligence in something they're just practicing, they're not sure what the outcome is going to be inherently dangerous. And so can AI give you false medical advice? Yes. Is that dangerous? Yes. And so we need to be careful of that type of thing. But if it's a science, and engineering being the application of science, with engineering and science, and how warm will this component get if we do issue these stresses upon it, and can the material withstand that pressure, and will it continue to perform or not? That's a scientific thing. AI can do that and give you the correct answer, because it's the application of science, not a practice that we're working on. And so the greater the precision of what you're working on, the greater the value of AI, and the less likely it's going to give you a poor solution.
And thoughts on the social impact. And so I get it. Some jobs are boring. Some jobs are menial. They're difficult. I guess the question is that if we're going to upskill and we're going to say, well, okay, these are not going to be here anymore. I guess the question that needs to be asked, who pays and how is it organized and how do we do this? Because for me, I look at it, I mean, the reason, and I live perhaps half a mile away from a beautiful old cotton mill, now converted into houses, and it really is absolutely, it's not industrial at all. It's in the middle of a rural area, and it is absolutely beautiful. You can go and buy yourself a 4-story house overlooking a mill pond, and absolutely gorgeous. But during its time, you had obviously people that had the cottage industry of spinning. And then there was, the reason that they rioted and wanted to smash looms was that people were taking their livelihood away from them. And what was the answer? Because with so much automation, it is saying, well, okay, what is the answer? And I don't say that you can ever stop progress, but alongside the thinking of becoming ever more efficient and ever more able, I always think that there is the capability of actually becoming better as well, and more engaging and more considerate. But maybe I'm preaching at the wrong pulpit, perhaps, But it's just something that says for me it's about having complete answers. You understand what you're going to do. You therefore need to understand the impact, and you have to have a plan for impact. It's a bit like looking at risk management. It's not often enough utilized by businesses. It's not revisited often enough, and it's not really thought about often enough. But hey, I'm going to get off my soapbox now because I know who the real expert is in terms of this.
Well, I think you're on a very good soapbox, Malcolm, and I 100% agree with you. It's the human element that allows us to deploy technology, and we got to keep in mind who's boss here. We're the boss, not the technology.
For me, it is what's all this working for? Mm-hmm. I'm not seeking to remove wealth from people. I'd like to be able to level things up if I possibly could. I'd like to be able to create opportunity out of this, but I don't see the thinking about it. I think quite often the danger is in all of this is that it doesn't take a full view of all of the stakeholder benefits within here, because somebody has to pay. If you've got inactive people, reality is most Western democracies will have some level of government-provided support. And if that is needed to increase, then somebody has to pay. And to me, it seems that we've got to be cleverer in terms of how do we actually re-educate and look after people and point them in the right direction. But you have had an extraordinary life, an extraordinary career, and it's far from over. And long may it continue. But you've also got a fascinating perspective, and I know as I grow older, I sort of remember things, and I sort of get wry amusement, How could anybody plan a really complicated refinery and factory without the aid of any technology? Well, I know because I did it. Yeah, and that's still programmed into my mind. But now it would never work that way. And I remember telexes and faxes and having to photocopy faxes and not having an ERP and all of those things. I remember doing my inventory planning on Lotus 123 and having to press, I can't remember whether it's F9 or F10 to calculate, and it would take 10 minutes to calculate a spreadsheet, and it was the DOS version as well. So you remember the real basics in terms of this, but then you're a tiny bit more mature than me, but we also are on this path of amazing change. I mean, the generations that have perhaps lived for over 50 years now have gone through an extraordinary change, and that change is actually accelerating. The advantage is that we saw the derivation of what the manual task was. And so I'd like your thoughts about what do you think has fundamentally changed about your work from when you started and where you are now?
Well, gee, I don't know. I can fax you the answer to that one, Malcolm. No,
Could I not have a telegram? Could we do it by Morse code?
I haven't heard of the word fax in many years, I don't think. So that is a great way to kind of position that question. The shift that has really kind of shaken my cage is a PhD industrial engineer. What I am an expert at is creating optimal solutions. And so optimal solutions is what my profession is about. And so we collect all the data and we define what the objective function is, and we solve the equation to either maximize or minimize certain KPIs. And so that's what my profession is about. Unfortunately, now that the new normal is disruption, the creating of optimal solutions is no longer optimal, because the future that we are trying to address has tremendous uncertainty in it. And therefore, the data that we're using to define the optimal solution is inaccurate, and therefore the solution too is inaccurate. And so what I need to do is change my overall goal from trying to find the optimal solution and instead find a series of options that will perform well given the uncertainty which is going to occur. So my world shifts from optimality to optionality. Someone asked me, gee, Jim, what companies are you investing in today? I said, the companies I'm investing in are the companies that have the greatest optionality. And so if we go back to the top of the show in the toilet paper, if your factory can only make single-ply paper or two-ply, your factory can only make single-ply toilet paper, and you have another factory that makes two-ply paper, but then there's the next guy sitting next to you where John in his factory can make, in that same factory, either single-ply or two-ply by just throwing the switch. Guess what? We wouldn't have had the toilet paper shortage with COVID, because COVID had nothing to do with how frequently we went to the bathroom. COVID had to do with where we went to the bathroom. We went to the bathroom when COVID hit where we consumed two-ply paper at home, not at the office, the restaurant, or the hotel where they use single-ply paper. So we did not have a shortage of toilet paper. What we had was a shortage of two-ply toilet paper. And so if someone had designed their factory with optionality, so they had the ability to make single-ply or two-ply, we never would have had toilet paper in the COVID discussion whatsoever. So my biggest shift is a shift that's very fundamental, that says I no longer optimize, I now optionize. And by having a business that has options, when this and this and this disruption occurs, I now have the option to do this or this or this. And it's a much more fluid world, much more dynamic world, where I need to have the adaptability, the resilience to deal with those disruptions which will be coming.
Spot on, Jim. Absolutely agree. I think perhaps I overstrive and overreach, but I look at this tremendous process of digitalization that we've had over the last decades. And then I begin to look at logistics and supply chain, and I then say, okay, how do our systems move beyond the transactional performance? How do our systems become strategic tools that say, okay, things are changing? Because if you look at it, businesses will review a number of points. They might review if they've made an acquisition or a disposal or you've had a merger. And so therefore, that says that you do a fundamental and what is hard to do at the time, network review. And you look at your options in terms of how do I put this all together, and what is actually optimal. And you'll then go and factor in the reality check, which will be what are the property leases and commitments or contracts that I have, and what is the limit to my flexibility. And we'll do that once a decade maybe. And reality is that we should be equipped to almost do that, I feel, on a continuous basis at this stage, that we understand the solution, that sort of pickled in vinegar solution that we put into the jar and we put the lid on it and put it back up on the shelf. That solution, it'll sort of work for a period of time, but who wants to eat a 10-year-old pickle? And that for me is where I get disappointed. I also get disappointed in terms of logistics service providers possess a huge amount of data. The data about what they have today and the data about what they've tendered and haven't won. And all of that is, I believe, not used. And I think this is the big data and big picture that we need to be able to do with agility. And I would turn around and say, why the hell not? What would we get out of it? Massive change, probably more profitability for logistics service providers. We would probably get reduced costs for the customers of logistics service providers, and we'd probably come up with more sustainable solutions, and we'd probably then allow to do things about modal shift. It would give us better ability to plan going forward. And that is my sort of, again, back on my soapbox, that's my frustration that says, come on, guys. If you said to any large-scale business that you could double your EBITDA by actually focusing on this, and it isn't as difficult as you think, I would say almost any other sector would say, hey, we really want to have an interesting conversation about it. But for me, I think this is the fundamental miss and opportunity all in the same sentence. So your optionality, I absolutely agree with. But I think it needs to be driven from a fuller view of our supply networks. Those are the tools that I want to see developed because they really add value.
Yep, right on. Same page, absolutely.
So, look, Jim, I have probably rattled on too much and not allowed you to tell more about what is a fantastic life and career thus far. Do you have any questions for me? How about that? I'll give you one for me because I've been really rude and I've only asked you questions.
Well, I think the question that is paramount in my mind right now is how does Malcolm take his tremendous capability to interview and to interact with a variety of guests and turn that into a portion of business? I'm thinking it as from a capitalistic perspective.
Yep.
How do you monetize this benefit? Your talent is amazing, and your insight is very, very astute. And so I would want to think about how to capitalize on that.
I have two aims with it. My first aim was recognizing that I work for one of the most wonderful industries in the world. There is, in truth, a real global village of fantastic people that every day do wonderful jobs and do some of the most difficult and underappreciated jobs that actually deliver everyday life and value to pretty much everybody on the planet. And I think that's incredibly special, and I've always felt it's a privilege to work within that. So what I wanted to do was, there didn't seem much about recording the wisdom and introducing the people of the industry and to be able to capture that. And my first aim was capturing it. My second honest aim was a little bit of indirect marketing in terms of my own business.
Yeah.
Because I hate the multiple emails going to people because it bothers the life out of them. I like more in terms of saying, well, okay, I'm ready to have a conversation with you. And also it's about giving somebody an offer of saying, okay, if you've got a long, boring drive, back home and you don't want to listen to music, then maybe, hopefully, I'm the tone of my voice isn't too sleep-making. But I think that was it. In terms of the monetizing, we get approaches from PR agencies reasonably frequently. That is something that I sort of look at with all due care. Generally, if somebody's employed a PR agency, what you tend to find is that they've given all the money for the PR agency and they want to do an interview for free. That for me is sort of fascinates me. But hey, all good business is about having great conversations, surely. And, it does have its linkages within here. We do have an expanding listenership. Lord knows, it won't be me. It's always the guests. I've spoken to some fantastic people on this channel that I've been utterly humbled by what they have done and the life experiences they've gone through. It's very cathartic as well. You get the opportunity to talk to people that have made mistakes, have solved problems, have had challenges. And this goes back to the way I probably think that we used to learn. We used to learn by sharing and telling stories and all of these things. And I think we are equipped to learn in this way. That's what I think is the fundamental. As to monetizing, I'm a great believer in a concept I call ample. And I believe that you can have too much. And the definition of too much is when it stops you living amongst the people that are your tribe, your crowd. As soon as you need to go and employ security or go and live off on an island somewhere or separate yourself off from humanity, I argue that's too much. I like to maintain, for me, I want to always be approachable to whoever I talk to. So my view of ample is get to enough and then turn around and see what good you can do beyond that. Again, it's that karma view. Try and give back where you can. So that's me.
Great. I love it.
So, Jim, thank you so very much for giving up time and for sharing your life and career. It's been extraordinary. I'm actually still processing all the things that you've said in terms of the journey that you've made through life, and it's been utterly fantastic to listen to. So thank you ever so much.
Well, thank you, Malcolm. I've enjoyed the discussion, and time went so quick. We must have had fun.
I think we did. Look, all the very best to you. Cheers, Jim.
Thank you, Malcolm.
So that's the conclusion to another Logistics Collective podcast. If you do want to track and follow us, we're available on all the normal podcast channels, so including Spotify, Apple, and many others. Or you can listen to us on logisticscollective.com. And we also publish on YouTube as well for those that prefer that as a channel. I look forward to speaking to you soon.
You can get in contact by email, podcast@logisticscollective.com, or leave a voice message on our website, logisticscollective.com. The podcast is a production by LaGuru.